Alright, it's Tommy here, just in Nike Pegasus Turbo Next Nature. I'm gonna take these out for a run tonight, and then I'm gonna see how it is and update you guys. Hey guys, Tommy here. This is what everyone's been waiting for, the Nike Pegasus Turbo Next Nature. Today, I'm going to talk about this shoe and see if it lives up to the legacy of the Pegasus Turbo. Let's find out. I'm going to get straight into it. What everyone wants to know, the weight. For me, in my US size 9, the shoe comes in at 252 grams or 8.9 ounces for my left foot. Now on my right foot, the shoe is a little bit heavier for some reason at 255 grams or 9 ounces. And I think it's because of the uneven amounts of ZoomX scraps in the midsole. Speaking of midsole, this shoe is taller than the previous Turbo 2 with a stack height of 23 millimeters in the forefoot and 33 millimeters in the heel, giving it a drop of 10 millimeters. I can't confirm if this is the actual stack height. I could be off by 1 or 2 millimeters, but when I ran in the shoe, it felt remarkably similar to my Pegasus 38, and that's probably because of the similar stack height and drop. I feel like the Turbo Next Nature is a bit taller than the Pegasus 38, but that's probably due to the different midsole material. I'm going to say the stack heights are the same because it feels very similar when underfoot while wearing both shoes side by side. This shoe comes in 2 colorways on release. One of them is black and one of them is the one I have, which is pure platinum and red crimson. I would have gotten black, but I think this color just pops much more, and you're gonna see why. The price of the shoe comes in at about $150 US, which I think is not so bad. At first glance, these shoes kind of look like the Yeezy Boost, probably because of the colorway in the upper. So it's quite stylish. Now that we got that out of the way, let's dive into the details, starting with the upper, the midsole, and the outsole. Let's go. On top, we have a Flyknit upper made with recycled Flyknit yarn, which Nike says is excess Flyknit from the manufacturing process. If you look right here, it's kind of reminiscent of the Pegasus Turbo 2 with these speed lines. And we got this stripe here, which is very similar to the first one. From front to top, the stripe leads up to the tongue. It's a thin, gusseted tongue with perforations to allow your foot to breathe. On top of the tongue, you can see that there's a fold that forms a pull tab. They put it in the front, but not the back. Come on, Nike. You can also see Nike's Move to Zero pinwheel logo and the Flyknit logos on the tabs in Nike's Volt green color. The laces are pretty standard, but they have this really cool detail. The color looks like an off-white ZoomX color like the midsole, but actually it's white and golden threads woven together to create this off-white kind of look if you look at it far away, at least in this colorway. On the eyelet chain for the laces, there's no extra hole for those of you who likes to use a runner's knot, probably because the tongue is gusseted and it's not necessary. I don't use a runner's knot anyway, so. On the side, we have this blue Flyknit material, which I don't think is really necessary because it's just weight. But it's Nike's way of just saying, hey, we use recycled Flyknit material in our shoes. The swoosh right here is also made from Flyknit, and it's kind of weird because I think Nike should have just printed the swoosh just like on the previous Turbo 2 and also on the Vaporfly. It would have saved a lot of weight, but hey, it's Nike being Nike. They like to find ways to reuse old materials. On the back, the heel counter is pretty stiff, so it provides very good stability in the heel. Just listen to that. That's pretty stiff. Probably the stiffest heel shoe I own. A pretty cool detail on the back of the shoe is the Volt green stitching. It matches the Volt green color of the pinwheel logo and the Flyknit logo on the front, bringing in that complete look from front to back. Inside the shoe, the padding in the heel is very similar to the Pegasus 39, so the fit is quite comfortable. Nike's really good at styling their shoes. If you can see, the crimson red interior matches the crimson red swoosh on the outside. The inside of the shoe, the insole, is made from Zoom X material, I think, and it's glued to the inside. If you can see right there, this is Nike's Space Hippie logo, and that is their commitment to using trash and recycled materials in their shoes. Now, let's talk about the midsole. First things first, the Zoom X logo is big. Probably the biggest Zoom X logo Nike has used on a shoe. They really want you and others to know that you're rocking Zoom X. The logo is big as my pinky. Here are the other Zoom X logos on other shoes. Quite small in comparison. Now let's talk about that juicy Zoom X midsole. It's actually in 3 parts. There's fresh Zoom X on top, Zoom X scraps in the middle, and a thin layer of SR2 exposed midsole on the bottom and heel. Some sources say at least 55% of the midsole is made from recycled Zoom X, so that's probably why my 2 shoes weigh a little different. These Zoom X scraps are sandwiched between a fresh layer of Zoom X foam on top and what looks to be SR02 on the bottom and the heel. How do I know it's SR02? It's definitely not Zoom X, as the foam would have shredded like on my Vaporflies, and it's not React because it doesn't feel like React to the touch. It's definitely SR02 because the foam on the heel feels like my Zoomfly 5's SR02 material. Nike added SR02 on the bottom to protect the Zoom X scraps and prevent them from breaking off on the road during your runs. It's also there to avoid the heel tearing issues that some runners had with the original Pegasus Turbo and Turbo 2. I never had it happen, but I guess other runners step on their heels to take off their shoes. Sticking with the sustainability theme, Nike uses recycled plastic and materials for the rubber outsole. It's a waffle pattern outsole, kind of similar to the original Pegasus Turbo with the front and rear rubber. But actually, the outsole shape looks similar to another Nike shoe. Can you guess what it looks like? Yep, kind of looks like a waffled Vaporfly outsole, at least on the forefoot. So the outsole pattern continues down to the heel, even over the exposed SR02 midsole. Now that's some detail because they could have just left this part flat. The shoe's also much wider. The outsole is also thin, which is great to save weight and also give it that racy look like the previous version and the Vaporfly. How long will it hold up? We'll just have to see, but I think it should be fine. Comparison to the Pegasus Turbo 2. Now, the big question, how does the Pegasus Turbo Next Nature compare to the original Pegasus Turbo and Turbo 2? All I can say is, it's different. The midsole stack is higher than the previous version, and it also uses different foam materials. I own the Pegasus Turbo 2 right here. This was my first real running shoe. Well, not really, but it was my first game-changing running shoe, all because of this. I'm about to retire my Turbo 2s though. They have about 600 kilometers on them, or about 370 miles. One, they're over 2 years old, so I'm not sure how resilient the Zoom X foam is with age. And 2, on my last hill rep workout, I did a 5K cooldown run back home after running up and down the side of a mountain road, and it really sucked on tired legs. I could feel my foot hitting the pavement. Maybe it's because the Zoom X foam lost its bounce after all those years, or the stack height is just low. Either way, the lightweight of the shoe didn't really do much for the cooldown run home. It was pretty good for the 10 times 1 minute hill reps though. After that cooldown run, I decided that I'm going to retire the Pegasus Turbo 2. I'll still use them, but I wouldn't want to run in anything more than a 5K anymore. And it's got to be a fast run too, because slower running means more ground contact time. I've used this shoe for everything from daily miles up to the half marathon in the past. I even hit PRs, which were later broken by other super shoes. The Pegasus Turbo Next Nature is the evolution of the previous version. It is a bit heavier, but you have to remember that it is wider and has a higher stack height. It's still lighter than the Pegasus 39 and the Temple Next Percent and other Nike shoes besides the original Turbo, Alphafly, Vaporfly, and Streakfly. But those are more race-oriented shoes other than the original Turbo. I'm sure the weight could have been lower if they dropped the stack height or made the shoe narrower, but people started to complain. Besides the racing options, these are Nike's lightest running shoes, if you can believe that. The Turbo Next Nature doesn't have the same pillowy feel as the Turbo 2, but I can appreciate the firmer midsole to handle more miles and conditions. Having firm ZoomX without a plate is a plus. The upper also has a more snug fit and isn't as minimalist as the previous version. I feel like the grip of the outsole is also much better than the old one. I used to joke around about the Pegasus Turbo 2 looking like a Ferrari of running shoes. Now, if the Turbo Next Nature was a car, it'd probably be a Maserati. Same engine and stuff from a Ferrari, but something that's better than driving a Ferrari for every day. Don't get me wrong, Turbo 2 is my absolute favorite running shoe of all time, and the Turbo Next Nature is something that isn't as great as the Turbo 2, but it isn't trying to be. Is it comparable? Yes and no. The shoe's like a better version of the Pegasus 39, just like the original Pegasus Turbo and Turbo 2 were better versions of the Pegasus 35 and 36 respectively. Now let me share my opinion of the shoe. The fit of the shoe is comfortable. You guys know the Pegasus 39? Well, this is a Pegasus, so it does feel just as comfortable. While running, I could feel the Flyknit upper. It's not a bad thing. The upper does feel light, but I can feel it, unlike the Pegasus Turbo 2, which feels like the upper disappears from your foot as you run. The midsole is firm yet comfortable. It isn't like the Street Fly, which feels like it'll bottom out. I don't own a pair personally. I got the Takumi Sen 8 instead. But I tried the Street Fly at the Nike store, and oh boy, the ZoomX foam on that sank faster than Titanic. You can literally see the foam just getting squashed underfoot. The midsole of the Pegasus Turbo Next Nature is pretty decent. I personally would have preferred a React mix in the heel and outsole because I'm not a big fan of the SRO2 foam, and having React makes it much more like the previous Pegasus Turbo 2. Now, should you buy these shoes? It doesn't feel like a super shoe, which seems to be the buzzword going on in the running world these days. But this shoe to me feels like a comfortable daily trainer that can do everything from daily miles to speed work, long runs, and the occasional race too. A lot of runners obsess over having the latest tech in their shoes, like carbon plates, super lightweight, and very responsive foam. But we're not always racing or running fast every time we lace up our shoes. This shoe kind of brings the simplicity back while also being environmentally sustainable. It's a pretty stylish shoe as well, so Nike was pretty smart to do this sustainable and recycled material campaign on shoes that are really popular amongst runners. Oh, Fly Next Nature. Too expensive. Sorry, had to clear my throat there. I think more people will wear this shoe besides runners, so it's one of those shoes that you can really do anything in. You can run in them, go shopping, wear it to match your clothes, wear it to work, literally anything, and you won't look weird. But I only wear my running shoes when I run anyways, at least until I retire them. Too many people have high expectations of running shoes, and if you're that person, then you're probably better off getting the Saucony Endorphin Speed 3. Would I use this shoe in a race? I would, but I have other shoes for that purpose. This shoe is for doing everything in training, from daily miles to speed workouts to long runs. Can this shoe be used in a race? Yes, you can run in anything. I once saw a guy running a half marathon in Air Jordans. I wanted this shoe specifically not only for nostalgia of the old Pegasus Turbo 2, but because I wanted a non-plated running shoe to do everything. Too many people obsess over plated shoes. I remember back then people saying that running often in plated shoes is bad for your calves or Achilles tendon or whatever. I just think plated shoes are more of a handicap in training. Although I do have plated shoes that I use for daily miles, I feel that having a neutral non-plated shoe for everyday running feels more relaxing and comfortable. Sometimes I don't want the shoe to push me forward. There are times when I'm running in the tempo next percent, and when I'm tired, I just keep saying to myself, just let the shoes do the work, just let the shoes do the work. And yeah, they'll definitely propel you with the ZoomX, AirPod, and plate combo, especially when you're tired. But we aren't always running to where we're tiring ourselves out towards the end of a run. Sometimes we want comfort and being able to push rather than throwing our feet on cruise control. Some runners get too used to plated shoes that when they go back to a non-plated shoe, they feel like they can't hold it up for a run. I feel like that's me too. Using plated shoes too often, I think it's a mental thing, and it causes you to believe that you need plated shoes to run, when in fact, you don't really need them. So Nike is giving us a taste of what they can do. This shoe is a fusion of fashion, environmental sustainability, and of course, running. Nike wanted to create a do-it-all shoe, and I think they hit that mark. It uses Nike's sacred ZoomX foam, sustainable materials, and it looks great. I'm not a shoe reviewer, elite runner, or a professional YouTuber, but these are my thoughts and introduction to the Nike Pegasus Turbo Next Nature. It seems like people want a race shoe that can do everyday things rather than an everyday shoe that can do a race. And remember guys, it's not just all about the shoes. We're all runners. If you think that running shoes are going to make up for your lack of training, then you have more problems to worry about than running shoes helping in your next marathon or race. That's all I got guys. What are your thoughts on these shoes? Are you going to be picking them up? You can leave your thoughts and questions down in the comments. I'll see you next time.